I talked about the fact that in the 50s and even in the 60s, things at Columbia High School athletics were much different than they are today. Perhaps that's not more so than in the area of women's sports. There really wasn't any women's sports in the 50s and the 60s. And it was not until Title IX was passed in 1972 that women at Columbia High School entered the athletic fields, and Columbia High School in particular dominated women's sports from there on in. Now, one of the sports that they dominated was volleyball. And our next honoree is one of the pioneers of the first volleyball great teams, Lisa Masur, class of 1978. The team basically was formed by Mr. C, Mr. Shizowich, the famous soccer coach who everybody knows. But Mr. C was an expert in soccer when he came to Columbia. He was not that in volleyball, but he decided that the same things that worked for him in making Columbia soccer a powerhouse might just work in coaching girls volleyball. So the feeder programs, the summer programs, the playing all year round, that started way back when. 247, that's quite a number. That was the streak that Columbia High School women's volleyball, the number of games that they won in a row from 1977 to 1988. A feat that will probably never be equaled in any sport at any school. Probably the first superstar of women's volleyball was our honoree Lisa Masur. The first 2 years, she was the co-captain of the team. They won 2 state championships, numerous tournaments. She was considered the best player on the team, the setter. She won many awards as the best server, best setter. She gave back to the program. She helped establish the South Orange Maples program that helped perpetuate the streak. She coached clinics for young girls for a number of years. She competed at Rutgers as a walk-on. Unfortunately, as many of you know, she suffered serious health issues, serious physical injuries, which forced her to retire. Her entire life for the past number of years has been a struggle, but she has courageously fought the battle. She's not here tonight because illness prevents her from doing so. But many people are here to honor her, including her brother Dave, who was inaugurated in our first year as a soccer player, class of 1980. And again, as I talked about earlier, family, tradition, the closeness that we feel here at Columbia. So I'm sure many of you here today honor Lisa, are proud of the fight that she has fought, not only on the athletic field, but in life itself. Accepting on her behalf tonight is her brother, Dave Masur, class of 1980.
Okay, just like to say hello to everybody, and I have to first talk to the Hoopers because that was a very difficult act to follow. We set a very high bar. I'm over in the side trying to think of some poems to go. And as some of you who went to school with me know that probably English was not my best subject. So we're going to bypass that entourage. But that was an unbelievable speech, John, and very much appreciated by all. I want to thank you personally, as I'm younger than John and certainly spent some time at Memorial Park. He didn't mention hockey, but the Hoopers were very good at hockey. And they used to play hockey, and you know, when younger kids came like myself would usually get the not such a good treatment at times, as they were very good and I was very bad. So didn't always end up well. But congratulations, it was a phenomenal speech. So, we're here to accept on Lisa's behalf. Lisa's had a really tough battle, like kind of her whole life. She had many injuries playing sports. She's gone through many surgeries. And then ran into a bunch of illnesses, including MS and a bunch of things, and is kind of wheelchair bound and has made a great life for herself, even though she can't really leave her house. She's in a wheelchair. She's got all sorts of tubes coming out of her. But she's unbelievable spirit that she really gained from sport that allows her to really enjoy each day and compete and fight and really, really move forward. And so I just wanted to share that with everybody because, she's constantly in tune with a lot of things that are happening around. She tries to pay attention and has a really great spirit for someone that has a very, kind of a narrow life and is in a lot of pain a lot of time, for really a long period of time. And has done a remarkable job at withstanding all that and being incredibly positive. So as, John talked about looking up to Paul, we certainly look up to Lisa for all that strength and that positivity she brings towards us with her ability to deal with everything that's faced her. And part of that, as we talk about that, goes back a little bit to her as an athlete. Lisa's a high achiever. She did really well in school. She was always right growing up as her younger brothers. She was always right. I mean, always. There wasn't really much, there was not much debate, and usually probably still is, right? So, not easy. She's a battler and a fighter. She listened, she learned, she did what she's supposed to do. She always exceeded expectations, totally determined, totally focused, always wanted to do the right things, and competed. And she wasn't really in sports like she had so many of these athletes that in the 70s, in the late 70s there, that we had so many great female athletes, a lot of them in the room, and had great teams. Our basketball team, our women's basketball team was legendary back then under Coach Tom Ruggiero, and they had great athletes there. And Lisa was part of the athletic part that wasn't really part of that. She was always played with myself and my brother Keith and really worked hard at different things, but then she fell in love with volleyball prior to having a team, and she dedicated her time and her life to that as she went on. She continued to follow it at the beach and do different things along those lines. But, that's kind of a little bit of a synopsis, but, I really have to get back to what Lisa wanted me to say. So now I got to follow up on some key points. She wanted to make sure I congratulated all the other honorees and the great tradition of athletics here at Columbia High School. She also wanted to make sure I thanked her teammates. She looked at this as a team award. It was a bunch of girls that Mr. C, as they talked about earlier, put together and, made them competitive from day one. As John talked about, Mr. Curcio and some of his coaches saying, winning is the idea, really the mantra of what's going to happen here. Mr. C, for those who played soccer, we have a lot in the room, and a lot of people who know Mr. C, he was all about winning at mostly not any expense, but almost any level, right? It was pretty intense and pretty focused and super competitive. So there weren't many options. He wanted to win at all costs and really set the bar high. So practices were extraordinarily tough. You had to be tough-minded, you had to be focused, and you had to want to do all the right things all the times. So Lisa also really wanted to honor Mr. C's legacy, really feels that this award really goes out to Mr. C and his dedication and the impact that he had on her. So I think I've given you a general picture. I've taken up a little bit too much of your time, especially so I don't have as many jokes as poems as some of the other people that have came up here. And I haven't used any notes here, John. Where's John Hooper? No notes for me, right? So I want a little credit for that, right? This is off the cuff. Paul, give me a little help. Remind your big brother. And let me introduce my brother Keith. He's got a couple more comments about my sister Lisa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. And I don't have much left to say. I think they've covered it all. But for the most part, I think Lisa was wishes she could be here. She was really disappointed. She would have been very much loved the atmosphere, loved seeing people and all that. So very disappointed that she couldn't be here, but obviously, her health is not in good way, and so that prevented her. So Dave talked about her. One thing that didn't really focus on, she was small. She was tiny, undersized. No one thought she could play volleyball, right? So when she left Columbia, she went to Rutgers to try and play. And she went as a walk-on, and the coach there was an ex-Olympic coach, pretty much told her, don't even bother coming out. You're not going to make the team. There's no chance, right? Well, she took that Mr. C determination, that fight that he kind of grilled into us and drilled into everyone that played for him, right? And took that to Rutgers, made the team, played there, and earned a lot of respect from the coach there. So that was a big achievement for her in her process. And she continued to follow the sport of volleyball, beach volleyball and everything else when she could. She'd go out on the beach in her wheelchair, and she really enjoyed and loved the sport. So a lot has to be said for her continued following of sports in general. And Dave talked about she'd play with us in the backyard, but not just us, our friends. She'd come out and she'd play baseball, she'd play basketball, she'd play with us in the streets, right? And that's kind of where she got her athletic, ability, and it was more or less trying to keep up with us. She'd watch it on TV because that's all that was on in our house, so she had to watch it. But for the most part, she continued that throughout. She would watch every one of her nieces and nephews' games over the internet and continue, whether it was softball, soccer, she would be watching them dedicated. And all of them are here today to kind of honor her. So thank you guys for coming. So I think that just talks a little bit about her and her, passion for sports and passion for life, and continuing to kind of live by being able to watch and her nieces and nephews and so forth. And lastly, I think Dave said it, she wanted to dedicate this to Mr. C, thank him for the courage he instilled in her to continue to fight with her health, right? And she wanted to thank all her teammates and thank Betsy for being here in person as well, and thank the parents that helped support her through the process when she was in the high school as well. So I think that's it. Anything else? I think we're good. So thank you guys very much.